Love, like, how you pull up?
Hiya, welcome back to another instalment on the Primastar with no charging. Right, we changed the alternator and it made no difference. I'm pretty sure the alternator that I've put on's fucked, but yes, no battery light. So, suspect the LED's gone. I don't think that's stopping it charging, but to make sure, I'm gonna change the LED. Now, I don't think I've got an LED, so I might have to nick one off something else, just so it's got something there. But we'll come to that. I mean, if I've got an LED, I'll just put a new one on it, but I probably haven't. So anyway, first we've got to check it out, which this cowling shitter wants pulling off. Pretty sure it just pulls off. Maybe it doesn't just pull off. I think it does though. It does. It should. You know. Well, that was harder than I thought it was going to be. And then we'll just remove it from the side. And then we have a couple of torx bits there. So let's get a torx screwdriver. Now I've got a really top quality toolbox here. Now, I've unlocked it. Normally I keep it locked because it's got the best quality of tools in it. As you can see, good selection. That's not the right one, is it? Right, I'll find a screwdriver. Right, so I've got T20. So I'll just take these two screws out. And then drop them down inside the steering cowling so we can't find them. Nearly. So take them out, and once we've took them out, it pivots up and pulls off. You see on there. Right, and now we need to unplug it. So we've got some plugs. This one here, push that in. There we go. Nice and simple. Nice and simple. That's all just pulling out. Right. This other one is something similar. It's got a little focus, little lever there, and that pulls out as well. I say it pulls out, it's not doing. It's just swap hands. There we go. So then, the dashboard is out. Now, I'm going to take this to work where I've got a soldering iron, and we'll carry on from there. But that's how you get the dash out, nice and easy. Right, so we've got it off, as you saw, and now we're going to take it apart, which is T10s. So you've got to take all these out, and there's, well, all of them round there, and then there's some little shitty clips there. So let's take them out. I'm just going to unscrew them all because you don't need to watch me do that. And then we'll proceed further, delve deeper. This is quite awkward whilst wearing a coronavirus face covering. Right, so I've taken all them little screws out, and now we've got to take these clips off, set the front off. So, hang on. There's one. There's another. And there's another. So we've got that bit off, and then we're left with that shitter. Right, so now we've got to take these needles off somehow. I think I'm just going to pull them off. But make a mental note, put them all the way back to the start and make a mental note of where they are so you can put them back on in the same place. And to get these off, as you can see, I've got very specific tools for this. And I'll be honest with you, I already pulled that one off, but you use 2 screwdrivers at each side and just lever it really carefully. Well, that's what I've done anyway. I mean, if you do that and it fucks up, don't blame me, but that's what I've done. I'll do. Right, so now all needles are off, this should just pull off, and it does. And then we can see that's the LED, that's broken. That's the one for the charge light. So hopefully I've got one to put on it. If not, I'll just nick one that isn't as important, like the indicators or some shit. No, I'm only messing, I won't take that one. But yeah, we're gonna solder a new LED on there. Actually, no, sorry, it's solder in it. It's YouTube. We'll solder it on. Right, so we've got some LEDs. Now they are slightly smaller, but they're the closest I've got. And if you look at this track here, we've got, point the camera at it, we've got a common ground. So that should be the negative. Now I'm going to meter it out to make sure, but we also want to take that piece of shit off. So we've got nice soldering iron here, quality, just warming up ready. When that's warm up, I'll take that off. Right, so we've got our meter with a diode test on it. I mean, everyone's got one of these in the pantry, I think. But if you don't have one of these, you can do this with a multimeter. But what you've got to remember is, when you're testing resistance with the multimeter, the anode and cathode, these go backwards. So the positive becomes a negative and the negative becomes a positive. So just remember that when you're testing it. Now, when we measure these, if you see, lights up there, and the black is on the K, and that one's backwards. I've tested all these here, and that one obviously doesn't work because it's blown up, but the K marks a cathode, so that makes it simple. But you just better to confirm that before I put it all back together and it don't fucking work, because that'd be great. So let's take that off. The first thing to do is to clean the tip of the soldering iron, because you always want a clean tip. And then you want to put, this is going to be hard with one hand, but you want to put a bit of solder on your soldering iron. And then, right, hold on, let's move that. We need to heat that up. And then remove it, which, as I said, I'm not going to be able to do with one hand, but it's just the same as soldering anything else. It's just quite small. I mean, it's not that small, but it's quite small. Right, so we've got that off with a bit of heat and that. I don't recommend doing that because you can damage the tracks on the board, but I ain't brought any solder wick with me or anything. So, it was what I left stuck doing. Or a hot air gun, so I'll do it easier. But yeah, we're left with that anyway, so let's get the new one. Right, so this is our new LED, which needs putting on the right way around because it's an LED, which clues in the name, it's a diode. Now that's upside down, which you can probably tell. But as you can see, it is a little bit smaller than the original one, but we can make it work, I think. So let's get it put in place the right way around. Right, so just check this, and there we go. So I know which way around it goes now. Right, so we've got it in place. It's the right way around. So now we need to solder this. I'm probably not going to be able to film this, but I need to solder this and bridge this solder to reach that LED, which it's done there. Not brilliantly. Anyway, I'll do that and then I'll show you where it's done, or when it's done. Right, we're back off again because I was struggling to get it to make a connection. So what I've done is, it doesn't look that pretty actually, but the solder will flow around it. I've actually scratched a bit of this off to make the solder pads closer together because they won't reach in the LED. So let's try putting it on again. Yes. Right, that's soldered on, so that's soldered on now, and it's connected. When I do a diode test on it, it's the right way around and everything, but it doesn't light up on the board. It sort of lights up and then flicks off, which is indicating that there is a short somewhere. Now, it's not necessarily a short, it could be the way that it's designed, and I haven't traced it back far enough, and it's a bit beyond my my experience with this sort of shit. What I have measured is, I've measured some diodes to make sure that these are all working the right way around. I've measured that capacitor, that's all right. That transistor there is fine. That it goes through, yeah, it does. It is that one. So anyway, I follow the tracks back and I've measured all the diodes and the capacitors and what have you. But the meter I'm using to do a diode check on it does only. It's so little the power that it puts out to protect things, that if there is a slight short, there is a slight voltage drop, or less of a voltage drop across this diode than there is across that one, because there's more of a short circuit through it. Now, I'm not 100% sure where that is and if it's meant to be there, but I'm just going to put it back together and hope for the best. So we'll see what happens. Right, so I'll just put it back together. Have it come apart. And we've got our needles to put back on somewhere. Right, so I put these shitters back on and just put them. So they wound all the way back. If you remember, that one was there. Just do the same with the others. So I put it on and then twist it backwards gently where it won't move because it's at the end of travel basically, and then push it down when it is where you want it. So same with this one, that was about there, and then same with this one. That's sick. Look, it's the wrong lever. Brilliant. Where's your needle? So front just pushes back on, clips back on. Line it up though. Helps to line it up. Right, that clips in. You can take this plastic off if you want to clean it, but I'm not bothering. And then put this back on where it come from, and then put the screws back in. And now it's back together, ready for the crushing disappointment of it not working. So let's go and try it. Right, so I'm going to put it back in. Putting it back in is the same as taking it out, but backwards. So let's see if this has worked. Because, as I said, there's a chance that it's not done anything and it'll blow the new LED. But right, let's try. Yes, it's exactly the same. Brilliant. Right, so that's made no difference because, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned, I can't remember if I did or not, when I was metering it out, there was a slight short somewhere going through the board. And wishful thinking was that it was, well, it was something that was meant to be there and then was altered by a different circuit that came in. A transistor switched over or something to turn the light on, but that seems not to be the case. So I'm just going to put the shitter back in and put that on, and then hopefully it'll charge at least. I'll leave the bit in the video even though it's not fixed it, just because I filmed it really, so I'm going to put it in video. So let's put this back on and then we'll change the alternator and then cry when it doesn't charge again. And this just pushes in. Just clips on. Quality product. So anyway, we're on alternator round 2. Now, I can do this, I think, without taking off anywhere near as much as I did last time. Which is the only reason why I'm filming it again, because think I've got an easier way of doing it. First, we'll set this headlight out, and I think I'll only need to take one of them off. So we'll take the headlight out, like we did last time. Right, so we've got enough room to pull the alternator out now, but we've still got to take the alternator off. And first, I want to take this intercooler off again. So undo this one, and this one, and then undo them and take the pipes off. And then, we've got them 10 millis again. 2 off. And then same as last time, I just pull this intercooler out. It's on a peg down there. I think it's going to be on a peg on both sides actually, but I think one's broke off. There. Right, so before we start pulling wires off the alternator, it is recommended to disconnect this B82 res. Because, well, it's going to have a positive feed, and if you touch it against anything, it's probably going to go on fire, which is less than ideal. So take your battery terminal off on negative. Right, disconnecting wiring, same as last time. Unplug that plug, and then you've got a 13 milli to your battery feed, which needs also undoing. So nuts off, wires off, quite simple really. Now it's disconnected. Right, anyway, 16 milli spanner. I want to take the belt off now. Last time I drew a map of the belts, which I've still got somewhere, so I don't need to do it again. But I recommend that you do that if you're taking a belt off, even though it's simple, like this one. I still say draw where the belt goes. Anyway, so once you've taken that off, we've also got to take off our pulley. Now this bolt's pretty long, which dick tighten that up. Right, I'm going to undo that with my right hand. Right, so I've cracked that off, and you've got to take this tensioner off because it's in the way of the bolts which hold the alternator on. I don't know, I mean I've already done a video doing this, but that's the joy of second-hand parts, isn't it? I put a fucked alternator on last time, so I'm hoping that this one, I'm going to put one on that works. So let's see. Anyway, I'm going to wind this bolt out because it's long as fuck. Right, so it bolts all the way out, and at the risk of repeating myself from last time, that little lug fits into that space there, so when you put it back on, it just locates it. Anyway, that's off, so let's take the alternator out. Right, so now all that's off, we're ready to take this shitter off. So these are 13mm. Now, like I said, if you watched the video last time, I did mention that I ain't got any proper tools, so I'm using an 1/2-inch spanner. I don't usually like to make repeats of videos, but it was a failure last time, so hopefully this time it'll work, because I'm pretty confident that the alternator that I've put on is faulty. well, say confident, maybe hopeful is more of a correct phrase. So anyway, let's take these two bolts out. There's two, one there and one there. Now, also worth mentioning that the bottom bolt on the alternator is easier to get from underneath, but I'm trying to put that off because the floor's wet, so I'm struggling doing it from up here, which is doable. Just don't get as much swing on the spanner. This would be a lot easier with a ratchet. Yeah, I give up and went underneath. So anyway, I find one of the most frustrating things is watching someone struggling like this, trying to undo a bolt if you're working with someone. So I'm going to do that for a bit just because it's really annoying. Ah, that's enough of that. Yeah, it's not finger tight yet. That's finally out, but it doesn't pull all the way out because it is the chassis leg, which is quite good. Anyway, let's take the top one out. That's one out, and the other one is, well, as out as it'll come. Right, so now we've got to get this alternator off, which is quite tight, so we're going to have to lever that off with a specific alternator levering tool, I think. Oh, that's not looking. I'll get something to get in. Let's just push it. Yeah, I'm going to have to fight with that a little bit because it's sticking, but try and get this bolt out now it's moved. I'll pull it out as far as it'll go. Right, so that was very tight and needed a bit of persuasion. Now, because I've undone this bumper at the front, there's just about enough room, well, not the bumper, the slam panel, well, not a slam panel, it's plastic, but because I've undone all this shit, there's just enough room to pull it out, but you do have to pull on this at the same time slightly. So I'm just going to have to use both hands for that. There we have it. One alternator removed. So let's put the new one in. When I say new one, I mean another second-hand one that's probably just as faulty. But let's put it in anyway. Right, so we've got it into position and then dropped it. What we need to do is, before we put this on, it's easier to put the bolt, the bottom bolt, just slightly in place, because otherwise it's awkward to get in. So this is the bottom bolt. Back off. I have to pull it out a bit to put it in place, but you see where I'm pulling. And then we can put our alternator into position. So we'll put the top bolt in first, and then we'll pivot it onto the bottom bolt. while again, innit? Right. Yeah, I'm gonna have to line the top and bottom bolts up, and I'm gonna need both onto that as well. So let's just put that on place and then we'll carry on. Right, another little issue. This might look as a tip for someone. This gap is too tight. Now these are captive nuts that are just sort of, well, recessed into there. So to make that gap wider, put the bolts back in, and then we'll just persuade the bolts, if I can get anything in here. So if I just knock, and I'm not going to be able to do this because I need to hold it, but if you just knock the bolts inwards, then we can move them nuts outwards a little bit and open that gap, because at the moment it's too tight to fit on the bracket. So now as you can see, that is pushed through a little bit and we've got a bit more room to play with. So let's put it back on. I'll try and put it on. So now it falls into place nicely. Now this one, as I mentioned multiple times now, is too long to fit, so we put it in already, and then make sure that's lined up. Yeah, that's in the hole. Anyway, and then we just tighten them up, and then we just tighten them up until they're tight. Yeah. Both alternator bolts are nice and tight, torqued up to the specifications, obviously, which is that tight. Might as well put the wires back on, which is that one, which has a nut on it and a washer. So we'll just tighten that up, which you don't really need to watch, and plug our battery light lead, but we ain't got a battery light that works, but we'll plug it in anyway because it might do other shit. I'm not 100% sure. Let's tighten that up and then put the belt back on. Right, so first of all we need to put our tensioner back in, which goes like that. And then we need to tighten this bolt up. So I'll tighten that bolt up, and then we'll go from there. Right, so when that's nice and tight, just the way we like it, we'll consult our diagram for our belt. So goes under the tensioner, up to the alternator, and around the alternator, and then we need to pull down on that and then hook that onto there. So that's the belt back on, and then you just need to make sure it's on all the way around properly. Right, so our alternator is in place again, and before I put it all back together I want to start it and see if it works, but before I do that I need to put the intercooler back on. So I'm just going to throw that in place and then start it and check it. Right, so we'll just tighten these clamps up. Reconnect the battery. Right, so now, moment of truth. Yes. Can't get a connection. And Yeah! About fucking time. What a good day. Now let's put the rest of the fucking thing back together. So there we have it, all back together and charging. And one of them this where I thought it was something simple, changed it, didn't work. Tested what I could test, everything seemed alright, but sort of second guessing myself and what have you. When I looked at the dashboard and the light was blown, I suspect that blew because the alternator had failed and blown it. But yeah, so fitting a second-hand part doesn't work, and then you think, have I fucked up and done something wrong? Anyway, now the alternator's on, just like to also show this. Yes, the button's not working, so the alarm's going to go off. But yes, we now have a battery light as well. So it seems that, and look how bright it is compared to the others with new LED on. That was definitely blown off, as you saw earlier on. And I couldn't find any faults on the board what would stop that working, so it must be that it works by a transistor must change the current path or something. I'm not 100% sure, I'm not that well up on electrics. So that's working as well, so great success. Anyway, don't forget to like, subscribe. If this has been useful, it probably hasn't, but if this has been useful to you, don't forget to like and subscribe, comment, all that sort of shit, and possibly see you next time. So see you, bye.